So if you pull up, any legacy marketing material for a mountain town, it always pitches this this perfectly static sanctuary.
Oh, absolutely.
You get the pristine, gently flowing river, maybe an undisturbed snow-capped peak in the background, and like a solitary hiker looking softly out into the alpine distance.
Right. It is a total masterclass in selling an escape from reality.
Exactly.
Because the underlying promise of those images is that, time stands completely still the moment you cross the county line. Like, nature is just existing in this state of perpetual harmonious balance.
But, if you are actually out there today, Saturday, June 6th, 2026, heading toward the massive crowds at the GoPro Mountain Games, or honestly just running your weekend errands around the high country, that static postcard is a complete fiction.
Yeah, a total fiction.
The ground beneath our feet is shifting aggressively, both physically and economically. So welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating stack of sources to unpack today.
We do. We are looking at a cross-section of real-time data that really captures this specific moment in the valley.
Mm-hmm.
We have the latest CDOT traffic and infrastructure alerts, the highly detailed 2026 Eagle County Regional Housing Needs Assessment, some local environmental and utility dispatches, and the official event logs straight from the GoPro Mountain Games.
And our mission today is really to connect the dots across those seemingly disparate sources.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at the massive recreational celebrations happening in Vail this weekend and, connect them directly to the intense physical growing pains that this community is actively navigating.
Right.
We're talking about critical infrastructure, water management, and just the raw mechanics of human expansion.
Yeah, the overarching theme here is really the intense friction between maintaining that ideal mountain lifestyle and the practical, often really messy reality of actually sustaining it on a civic level.
Exactly. And before we jump into the data, I just want to note for you, the listener, that we are going to be exploring some deeply polarizing local issues today.
Yeah, we definitely are.
Specifically around housing deficits and water rights. And our goal here is simply to unpack the data from our sources impartially. We are not taking sides or endorsing any specific policy.
Right, no politics.
Yeah, we are just laying out the mechanics of what the data shows so you can draw your own conclusions.
Because the data really tells a very compelling story of cause and effect. And understanding that mechanism is, far more useful than debating the politics of it.
100%. So let's start with the most immediate physical manifestation of this friction, which is the arteries of the valley. Because if you are driving over Vail Pass today, you are deeply immersed in orange cone season.
Oh, definitely. The CDOT logs show a massive shift on West Vail Pass. So between mile markers 180 and 190, all traffic has now been shifted into a head-to-head, barrier-separated alignment on the newly constructed eastbound lanes.
Head-to-head traffic on a high-altitude mountain pass is inherently intense, just on its own.
Yeah, it really is.
But I was digging into those CDOT logs, and the delays aren't just from the lane closures. The project actually mandates these periodic 20-minute full traffic holds in both directions.
Right, for the rock scaling.
Yeah, for rock scaling.
Yeah.
And for those who might not know the mechanics of that, they aren't just clearing a few pebbles off the shoulder.
No, not at all.
Crews are physically suspended on the adjacent geological formations, like above a live interstate, drilling and prying loose massive boulders to bring them down intentionally before they just collapse onto the new auxiliary lanes.
It's wild. And they are executing this highly dangerous work while simultaneously managing the peak summer tourist influx.
Right.
Which really highlights the brutal reality of high country infrastructure. You have this incredibly narrow window of favorable weather to complete major earth-moving projects before the ground just freezes solid again.
That has to happen now.
Exactly. The construction has to happen now, regardless of the fact that the town's population temporarily triples for the mountain games.
It's like trying to do a down-to-the-studs kitchen remodel while you are simultaneously hosting a massive house party.
That is the perfect analogy.
Right. Like guests are dodging drywall, and the fridge is just sitting out in the living room.
Yeah.
And then you add to that the single-lane daytime closures in Glenwood Canyon for the bridge joint rehabilitation, plus the resurfacing work near Wolcott, and the entire transit corridor is just under massive strain.
Which creates a serious compounding effect. Because the people sitting in those 20-minute traffic holds on Vail Pass or near Wolcott aren't just tourists heading to a kayak race.
No.
A massive percentage of that traffic is the local workforce commuting from down valley.
Because they can't afford to live in the towns where they actually work.
Exactly.
Which perfectly transitions us to the second source on our stack, the 2026 Eagle County Regional Housing Needs Assessment. Because if you've driven down the hill from Homestead recently, you have absolutely seen the visual marker of this struggle.
The crane.
Yes, that massive yellow crane currently towering over the Edwards skyline.
Yeah, it is an unavoidable piece of the landscape right now.
But looking at that crane, I really have to challenge the standard narrative here. Local politicians often point to active construction as a symbol of progress.
Right.
But if the 1,337 units currently in the development pipeline projects like the Timber Ridge Village redevelopment, if those end up priced at luxury or upper market rates, they aren't actually solving the foundational problem, are they?
Not at all.
That crane feels less like a victory and more like a glaring, multi-story reminder of our deficit.
Well, the data strongly supports your skepticism there. When we break down the housing needs assessment, the gross regional need over the next 10 years is 6,375 units.
Wait, over 6,000?
Yeah, 6,375. And even if you subtract every single unit currently in the pipeline, assuming they all magically get built on schedule, the region is still staring down a net deficit of 5,038 units.
Wow.
That is the gap just to stabilize the current local workforce.
5,000 units. That is the equivalent of building an entirely new municipality from scratch.
It is. The sheer volume is staggering. But the most critical mechanism driving this crisis is found a bit deeper in the report. 72% of that housing need is specifically for rental units.
Really? 72%.
Yes.
See, that completely flips the script on how we traditionally talk about mountain town real estate.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Because the conversation is usually dominated by, affordable home ownership, getting first-time buyers a mortgage, things like that. But the acute crisis is actually in the rental market. Let's trace the mechanism on that. How did the rental supply just evaporate like that?
Well, we really have to look at the life cycle of legacy mountain homes.
Okay.
So, decades ago, a standard 1980s duplex or large A-frame might have served as a shadow rental.
A shadow rental, meaning like informally housing local workers.
Exactly, housing maybe 4 to 6 ski instructors or restaurant workers. But over the last decade, as property values skyrocketed, those specific homes were purchased, gutted, remodeled, and transitioned directly into the second home market.
Oh, man. So a house that previously held 6 full-time workforce residents is now, a luxury retreat that sits empty for 8 months of the year?
Precisely. The physical footprint of the home is exactly the same, but its utility to the community has been zeroed out.
Right.
And the service and operational workforce, the people making the mountain actually run on a daily basis, they require flexible, accessible rental housing.
Because they might only be there for a season? Or they're just starting out?
Exactly. So when you systemically delete those legacy rentals from the grid without replacing them with high-density workforce housing, you end up with a 5,000-unit crater.
So that yellow crane in Edwards is an intervention, for sure,
Yeah.
but it is fighting a massive, deeply entrenched demographic headwind.
It really is.
And, while the community is wrestling with how to house its people, the environmental dispatches in our source stack reveal a totally separate, terrifying contradiction happening this exact same week regarding our natural infrastructure.
Yeah, the hydrology data from this week presents a textbook climate paradox. It's wild. Because on one hand, the environmental dispatches make it clear we are suffering through a historic drought. Local advocates are heavily pushing property owners to rip out their lawns and transition to water-wise xeriscaping just to preserve baseline flows in Gore Creek.
Right, because the long-term groundwater levels are severely depleted. And this isn't just an abstract environmental concern either. It actively compromises civic engineering.
Yeah, just look at the town of Victor.
Exactly.
The news sources report they just endured a multi-day water outage and a mandatory boil order.
Yeah.
And the cause wasn't contamination at the source, right? It was a physical failure of the town's aging infrastructure under the strain of the drought conditions.
It's fascinating mechanics. When groundwater levels drop significantly, the soil physically shifts and settles.
Oh, because it's drying out and shrinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this puts immense external mechanical pressure on these century-old municipal pipes.
Yeah. Furthermore, when the water volume inside those pipes drops, you lose the positive outward pressure that actually keeps groundwater from seeping in.
So it's getting squeezed from the outside, and it doesn't have the pressure pushing back from the inside.
Right. So the moment a pipe cracks and that pressure drops, you have immediate sediment and bacterial intrusion.
Wow.
Which mandates a boil order. And it completely paralyzes a local economy, especially during peak tourist season.
A parched landscape, failing infrastructure, towns literally running out of water. That is the reality on the ground.
It is.
But then we look at the official event logs for the GoPro Mountain Games happening this weekend, and the Vail Valley Foundation had to completely cancel all high-risk river events.
Yeah, totally scratched.
The prestigious Gore 4 Raft Challenge, the Pacifico Kayak Cross, completely gone. And the reason listed: unprecedented spring runoff and intense hydrological flows.
It creates immense cognitive dissonance.
It really does. You have a region so parched that municipal pipes are failing, while simultaneously the rivers are running so violently high that professional kayakers are barred from entering the water.
Yeah.
Walk us through the physical mechanics of that. How do we experience a severe drought and a massive flood event in the exact same week?
Well, it really comes down to the mechanics of a flash melt over a depleted landscape.
Okay.
When a region has been in a long-term drought, the soil loses its permeability. The deep earth is parched, and the surface bakes into a hard, almost impermeable crust.
Oh, so it's like pouring a bucket of water onto a concrete driveway instead of into a garden bed.
That's exactly it. Now, combine that concrete-like surface with severe climate volatility.
Right.
If you experience a sudden, extreme thermal spike in the spring, a rapid increase in high-altitude temperatures, the remaining snowpack melts instantaneously.
And because the ground is baked hard.
Because the ground cannot absorb that massive volume of water quickly enough, it bypasses the aquifers entirely.
It just flashes directly into the river basins.
Yes. It rushes violently downstream. So you have a flooded, incredibly dangerous river surging directly over a drought-stricken, parched landscape.
That is just incredible to picture.
And the water moves through the valley way too fast to actually benefit the local water table. It makes civic and event planning almost impossible because you are preparing for critical scarcity and dangerous overflow simultaneously.
Well, the human spirit in these mountain towns is nothing if not resilient.
That's for sure.
Because with the river events canceled, the athletes and organizers simply adapted. And the mountain games are absolutely thriving on the dirt right now.
Yeah, if the hydrology is uncooperative, you just pivot to the topography.
And the topography they are utilizing is brutal.
Yeah.
The event logs highlight the brand new Adidas Terex 20K trail run.
Oh, yeah.
This course is pushing athletes 20,000 vertical feet to Midvale. And, we hear the term vertical feet thrown around a lot out here, but to sustain a running pace up a gradient that steep is just a biological nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
You are instantly redlining your heart rate, managing intense lactic acid buildup, and trying to maximize oxygen uptake at an altitude where oxygen is already incredibly thin.
It tests the absolute limits of human aerobic capacity. And the individual athletic feats emerging from these dryland events are just remarkable. Grant Colligan took a dominant victory in Friday night's Adidas Terex Aprez 5K trail run, maintaining an incredible pace on a highly technical, steep track.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
But, the standout story for me has to be Deanna Mills.
Oh, for sure.
She's a 32-year-old engineer for SRAM, and she just won the women's cross-country short track mountain bike race. And according to the Dispatch, this was her absolute debut in this specific discipline.
Yeah, to take the title in a highly competitive field on your very first attempt is extraordinary.
It really is. But it makes perfect sense when you think about her background, though.
Right, the engineering side.
Yeah. If you spend your days engineering high-performance bike components, you possess a deep mathematical understanding of kinetic energy transfer, suspension dynamics, gearing efficiency.
She understands exactly what the machine is doing beneath her.
Exactly. She simply took that engineering theory out of the lab and applied it directly to the dirt. It is the ultimate fusion of technical expertise and outdoor execution.
It perfectly captures the evolving ethos of the region, I think. It's no longer just about raw grit, it's about highly technical adaptation.
I love that. Now, if you are looking to engage with the weekend without redlining your heart rate on a massive trail climb, the cultural core of the valley has some incredible offerings.
Definitely.
Down in Vail Village, artist Pat Milbury has unveiled the Heart of the Games sculpture.
Yeah, that was commissioned specifically for the town of Vail's 60th birthday.
Yes, it's a 4-foot piece, but what really elevates it is the interactive mechanic. It's designed so that people can actually place physical tokens inside the sculpture to represent their connection to the town.
That's a great concept.
It is. Because in an era where, everything we do is digital, where we show appreciation by just clicking a button on a screen, there is something very grounding about physically walking up to a piece of art and leaving a tangible artifact of your presence.
It transforms a static piece of public art into a living visual aggregate of community sentiment. Over the course of the weekend, it physically fills up with the collective memory of the people who interact with it.
And if you want to escape the crowds in the core entirely, our sources highlight a very quiet intellectual option down valley.
Right, at the bookstore.
Yeah, the Bookworm of Edwards is hosting Durango-based mystery author Scott Graham tonight for the launch of his latest national park thriller, Great Sand Dunes Massacre.
It is a vital reminder that the cultural ecosystem of the valley is deeply layered.
Very true.
The community supports high adrenaline physical feats, interactive art installations, and quiet literary events all on the exact same Saturday night.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've gone from the mechanics of rock scaling on Vail Pass to the systemic evaporation of workforce housing, the physics of a flash melt drought, and an engineer dominating a mountain bike race.
They seem like isolated dispatches, but they are honestly all symptoms of the exact same phenomena.
They are. Because to truly understand the high country today, you have to completely discard that vintage postcard we talked about at the top of the show.
Yeah, throw it out.
You have to look at the yellow cranes in Edwards, the orange cones lining the interstate, and the flash floods rushing down Gore Creek, and realize that none of this is background noise.
Right.
It is the active, chaotic pulse of a community fiercely trying to negotiate explosive growth against really harsh environmental limits.
The physical landscape and the economic landscape are demanding adaptation at a pace we just haven't seen before. Which actually leads to a very provocative long-term question for anyone invested in this lifestyle.
Ooh, let's hear it.
So, if we project these specific trends forward, as climate volatility deepens, delivering flash floods and severe droughts simultaneously, and as the housing gap continues to force massive demographic shifts, will legacy mountain towns eventually have to completely abandon their foundational identities?
Wait, abandon them entirely?
Think about it. If the snowpack becomes too erratic to support a massive ski industry, and the rivers become too volatile to safely navigate during the summer festivals, these communities will have to decouple their economies from the very elements that put them on the map.
Wow. A mountain town without reliable snow or runnable rivers. That requires a total economic pivot.
Exactly.
You aren't selling the ski bum dream anymore. You are suddenly forced to market the region entirely on, like, its high-altitude culinary scene, or its wellness retreats, or its intellectual and arts festivals.
Right. The very definition of a mountain community fundamentally changes.
The geography remains, but the culture is entirely rewritten by environmental necessity. That is a staggering thing to think about as you watch kayakers standing on the banks of a river they literally aren't allowed to enter.
It really is.
It really drives home the fact that the only constant out here is adaptation. Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Whether you are navigating the traffic holds on Vail Pass, cheering on the trail runners, or dropping a token into the heart of the game sculpture, we hope unpacking these sources helps you see the mechanics of the valley a little more clearly.
Absolutely. Stay observant out there and enjoy the weekend.
For sure. Please share this knowledge with a neighbor. Stay safe on the roads and keep your curiosity sharp. Remember, the picture is never as static as the postcard makes it look. See you next time.